Hey everyone, welcome to episode 11 of Trucksafe Live, the monthly show where we and our guests tackle the hot button issues impacting highway transportation. I'm Brandon, this is Jerad.
Hey everybody.
We are with Trucksafe and Childress Law, both of which are dedicated to helping motor carriers develop and maintain cutting-edge safety programs. I got a great show today talking about driver health and fitness issues, another hot button issue that comes up with a lot of our clients, so we wanted to spend some time talking about that. Before we do, what's going on recently in the news, Jerad, transportation?
Us personally, we got a lot of things going on. We just finished up a risk assessment, kind of a mock audit on a large trailer manufacturer. It's always interesting to take a look at those companies that find themselves over the years through acquisition, just enhancement of operations, becoming a motor carrier. And it's always interesting to look at those businesses knowing that they're not that traditional motor carrier and figuring out ways to make the compliance and regulations work for them. So that was pretty fascinating. We got a plant tour while we were at it, which was really
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, just seeing a full 53-foot dry van trailer being built in a matter of minutes, not hours, and pushing out like 200 of these trailers per day is just incredible to watch.
Graphics, flooring, all of it. Interesting.
Starts from a pile of sheet metal, which was, it's just, it was crazy to watch. But yeah, I think that's kind of the interesting thing that we kind of deal with on a weekly basis, or dealing with these non-traditional motor carriers. So private carriers, not only, trailer manufacturers, but even, the telecom companies and the construction companies and, landscapers, those that don't consider themselves to be motor carriers, but their drivers are regulated in the very same way as traditional trucking drivers for the most part. And so what we found is that they fail to realize that, and then they don't realize that until they get themselves in trouble.
And the realization that you need med cards for those drivers that are operating commercial motor vehicles or vehicles that are over 10,000 pounds, that comes as a shock to some of those companies as well.
Yeah, and so we spend a lot of our time kind of educating folks. I mean, that's kind of why we started Trucksafe in the first place, was to get a lot of educational content out there to folks that need it the most, those that don't have the resources of the larger trucking companies to understand exactly what's required of all the regulated fleets out there. So, yeah, I mean, it's there's no shortage of regulations to have to follow or issues to have to deal with. So, yeah, that was a great trip. Some other things going on in the industry that we wanted to hit on briefly. One of the things that we've had a prior show on, if you didn't see our show on the Safe Driver Apprenticeship Pilot Program, this is a pilot program that the FMCSA is in the early stages of rolling out, where they're going to let a limited number of 18 to 20-year-olds operate commercial motor vehicles in interstate commerce, subject to a handful of, it's more than a handful, subject to some conditions. And this is a pilot program, so it's going to be limited to around 3,000 drivers at the start and around 1,000 participating carriers. This is going to, again, allow younger drivers to operate commercial motor vehicles. As most of you will know, under the current regulations, the current structure, you got to be at least 21 years old to operate commercial vehicles. But we're going to open up this pilot program, see how it goes, and see if the agency, if the data is showing that it's safe to open up this program to the general public. So the one thing I wanted to mention on that, again, go back and watch our show. We had Lindsay on with Next Gen Trucking and Leah on from National Transportation Institute, who provided a wealth of information on that topic. But the thing that's coming up next week, I saw a notice from the FMCSA that they're going to have a listening session. I think next Monday, the public is invited, where they're going to kind of talk about the program and get some feedback from the industry. So if you have any interest whatsoever in that program, make sure you check that out. I think registration closes for that this coming Friday.
Absolutely. And as we know, many of the states allow 18-year-olds to operate in intrastate commerce already. But the goal of the program is to obviously open that up in interstate commerce after you satisfy the requirements of the program. And I can tell you, having heard the FMCSA give some presentations since the new administrator has come on board, certainly alleviating that driver shortage is one of their biggest priorities, if not their biggest priority at this point. So this is just another way that they're doing that.
Yeah. And then just a couple things going on at Trucksafe before we dig into today's topic. For those of you who don't know, who haven't seen our postings on social media, we recently launched our Trucksafe Compliance Network. It's a social media platform developed specifically for folks in a position of kind of managing safety for fleets. So safety directors, small trucking company owners, insurance professionals, medical professionals. If you haven't checked that out yet, check it out, trucksafenetwork.com. We also recently launched an iPhone and an Android app where you can get access to the network. The idea is this is just going to be a space for folks in the safety arena to share notes and to ask questions and to learn about all of these topics that we're constantly talking about. You also have access to our full library of DOT compliance articles and our video library. So check that out. You can find it in the App Store or the Google Play Store, and then again on trucksafenetwork.com. One of the things that we have going on tomorrow, in fact, one of the things we do through the network is we do some network exclusive content that's available to anybody who joins the network. It's free to join the network. So be sure to check that out. Tomorrow we are having a webinar. This is the third in our series of compliance related webinars for the network. Tomorrow's focus is going to be on personal conveyance, trying to kind of wade in that uncertain waters that is personal conveyance and exactly what it is, when drivers can use it, when they shouldn't be using it, and some considerations for motor carriers out there. It's one of those kind of issues that continually plagues the fleets that we work with. So we're going to try and bring as much clarity to it as we can. So check that out on the Trucksafe network. And then lastly, I'll just mention our mailing list. We have a mailing list where we're constantly pushing out these kind of articles that we write on these topics and our videos and stuff like that. If you're interested, check that out. Just go to trucksafe.com and sign up for our mailing list.
Yeah, before we segue to the topic too, we kind of have to mention AB5, which everyone I'm sure has read the articles and heard the interviews, et cetera, but we're kind of waiting on the other shoe to drop when AB5 is actually going to go into effect. And hearing from people that are a lot closer to this issue than I am, I've heard talk of maybe AB5 going into effect around October timeframe. So keep that in mind. We did a show on that. What was that, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, we had Doug Graw on from the Graw Group, who gave us a great breakdown of what it means now that the U.S. Supreme Court has denied review in the CTA, the California Trucking Association versus Bonta case, and the huge impacts that's going to have, especially to fleets with operations in California. We're already seeing the news about owner-operators protesting out in California, shutting down the ports, because essentially, as we talked with Doug about this, this is going to result in all of those owner-operators in California having very likely, to be reclassified as employees. And then the question is, what do? They own their trucks. Employees don't bring their own trucks to the game, so what are they going to do? So it's going to cause a lot of issues, and so we're just going to have to kind of see how that plays out.
Absolutely. So check out that AB5 episode if you want to get some greater details about that from an expert in the industry on the issue. Kind of segueing to the topic here, driver health and fitness is the topic of this show. It's a huge industry issue, has been for some time. It found itself on the ATRI top 10 list, I believe, starting in 2010, and it's kind of bounced around that top 10 list. I believe the last time that it appeared on the ATRI top 10 list, driver health and wellness, was 2018, which is a little surprising that it dropped off at this point, because it's certainly an issue that's not getting any better, I would say, especially with the average age of drivers at this point being 48. Driver health and fitness is obviously just becoming more and more of an issue as the driver population ages. Obviously, the common issues that we're going to be talking about would be sleep apnea, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, to name a few. These issues lead to a lot of problems on the road, including fatigue, which can be one of the most dangerous things that fleets have to deal with. And this is an area where the regulations don't provide a lot of guidance, a lot of parameters for motor carriers to address the issue. But some fleets are starting to take action on this issue, and our two guests today are right on the front lines of dealing with these two issues, and I'm excited to talk to them and bring them on.
Yeah, so as we go along here, as we said in other shows, it's a live show. You feel free to drop any comments that you have or questions that you have for our guest in the comments box, and that'll get to us, and then we can put it up on screen. So without further ado, I want to welcome our two guests on today. First up, we've got Dr. Mark Manera from the Supply Chain Fitness and Dr. Matthew Nuesse from Easy DOT Physicals. Whoops, wrong button. Let's try that again. Welcome, guys.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We're super excited. I know we've kind of gone back and forth via email. It's nice to finally get you guys live here with us and to kind of hit on this topic. So I want to have you guys introduce yourselves first off. And so maybe we'll start with Mark. Tell us about yourself, how long you've been kind of working in the industry, and what it is that you and your company do.
Yeah, so I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and actually I got started in this industry like, a lot of people that now I know being in the industry have years and years of bloodline in trucking, and unfortunately I didn't have that experience, and so I got into trucking by actually rehabbing drivers in a physical therapy clinic, and I was just really inspired, really honestly shocked by some of the lifestyle and some of the constraints and barriers that the average driver deals with when it comes to their health. And that's kind of what inspired me to start the trucking fitness company. And then actually last week, we actually just transitioned over to supply chain fitness, and we can talk about that a little bit. But what we do is we're really focused on exercise, nutrition, and accountability coaching for drivers and other employees at trucking companies, and really coming in and helping mitigate risk and increase retention rates for motor carriers.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining us, Matt.
Yeah. Hey, so I'm with Easy DOT Physicals. We do a couple different things. I'm a certified medical examiner. Obviously, I have been for about 8 years now. So my day-to-day is doing physicals mostly on drivers. I'm trying to get them certified, cleared to keep their license, keep being able to drive. But I also do a lot of consulting as well, either on the compliance side of it or how to do a physical with other CMEs, sometimes on the marketing side of it as well. And then I'm really, really passionate about my social media, especially YouTube, making videos for drivers. And the reason I started doing that, and I've only been doing that for a couple of years now, is because I continuously have drivers coming into my clinic not knowing what the standards are, or doing something before or not doing something before coming in, which really hangs their exam up. And the problem with that is not just that it's inconvenient for them to have to come back, but every time they come in to do one of these exams, their job is on the line, and I have to figure out, can they be certified for an extended period of time, or do I have to certify them for a shorter period of time? And doing these really small things can make a big difference in excuse me, in that process. So I really am big now on continuing to make those YouTube videos and my rest of my social media as well, just for information for drivers.
I think it seems like that's kind of something that we kind of all share. Each one of us here is this kind of, we realize that there's a real need in the industry for education on all of the topics, the respective topics that we address. So I think the more information that we all can get out there, the better. So maybe we start there, Matt, with kind of even just starting from the very basic level of kind of DOT physicals. Can you give us a sense of basically what types of things for any prospective drivers out there who are new to the industry looking to get into it, what do they need to know about DOT physical exam requirements and that type of stuff?
Yeah, so there's basically two types of requirements that that the FMCSA wants you to be compliant with in order to get your medical card. Things that are 100% a standard that the FMCSA says the medical examiner, we have no leeway. They have to meet this certain standard. The easy ones to kind of pinpoint are like a vision standard. Your vision has to be X, Y, and Z. Now there's this alternative vision standard, and again, I've made videos of, we can go on and on about that, but you have to meet a certain vision standard. If you have diabetes, you have to meet a certain standard. If you have hearing loss, or your hearing has to be a certain standard, and on and on and on. And there's a lot of things that the FMCSA kind of expects the medical examiner. They'll give us guidance, but they'll expect the medical examiner to be able to kind of use their best judgment. The goal, my job is not to figure out if a driver that comes in is healthy or needs medical treatment or needs a medication. My job as the medical examiner is to figure out if it is safe for you to be on the road and nothing else. So yes, there are certain standards, and again, I've done so many videos on all of the individual standards, so I wouldn't want to like go over every single one. But if it is safe for you to be on the road, if you're not going to have a stroke, God forbid, or pass out because you're too tired, or these kind of things that the FMCSA is trying to prevent accidents, then you're probably likely, or you should pass the DOT physical. So I think that drivers have a lot more. They're a lot more nervous than they really should be when they come into my office, more often than not. And again, I'm not going to speak for anybody individually. I don't want to guarantee that somebody's going to pass their medical exam, but more often than not, I'm passing people unless they really have something that should be addressed before.
And ultimately, what you're working towards when you're doing the medical exams is a medical card, right? Can you
Right.
kind of go through that? And then, I understand that there's different, you can issue them for different lengths of time based on what you're seeing in the exam. How does that work generally?
Yeah, so that's actually a good point, and something that, again, there's a lot of confusion with when drivers come in. So there's 3-month cards, there's 1-year cards, and there's 2-year cards. 2 years is the maximum you can be certified for. You have to be pretty healthy to get a 2-year card. For instance, if you have high blood pressure, even if it's managed really, really well, you're taking blood pressure medication, and I read your blood pressure, and it's a really good range. Blood pressure, being diagnosed as having high blood pressure, cuts you down automatically to a 1-year card. So there's a lot of individual things like that, but 3-month cards are basically for, there's a problem that needs to get resolved. I'm going to give you 3 months to resolve it and then come back. 1 year is for things that need to be checked more frequently. Blood pressure is the number one thing that I issue a 1-year card for. And then, I'd say 50% of the time people come in, they're getting a 2-year card pretty easily. If you check no on all of your intake paperwork and I really can't find anything egregious during the exam, you're getting a 2-year card.
So Mark, Matt was talking about some chronic issues that would prevent that 2-year card from being issued. So I'm sure you see a lot of this in your work. And I can tell you from my experience, and just if I have a week where I travel a lot, it's hard for my diet to stay on point. It's hard for me to be active. And thinking about that from a driver standpoint, I mean, if their wheels aren't moving, they're not making money most of the time. And when their wheels are moving, they're sitting sedentary in a truck. So that lifestyle seems so hard to remain healthy and to manage these chronic type of issues. How do you start someone that comes to you and says, hey, I want to get my high blood pressure under control, I want to get my diabetes under control? Like, where do you start with that person?
Yeah, well, and Matt, when you were talking, I have drivers come to me all the time. And they say, "Hey, I got 3 months, or I got 6 months before my DOT physical is coming up," or "Hey, I just got handed a 3-month card. I need some help. I need to figure it out." And I look at that as, with any driver trying to live a healthier lifestyle, I think everyone, driver or anyone included, they need that inspiration. They need something to say, hey, I need to make a change. And if the DOT physical is that thing that makes that, inspiration and gets them started, I'm all about it. That's awesome. What I don't like to see is when every single year, three months before their DOT physical, it's like, oh shoot, I better join the gym now and get started. And, I think that there's a little bit of a culture in trucking when it comes to making changes to drivers' health, where it just feels like you're putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. And it's just like, let me just try something really hard and flip everything 180 degrees for a couple of months so I can lower everything. I can get that card and then I'll check back next year. And, I think I really try to educate and tell the drivers, hey, your health goes with you for your whole life. And it's an everyday 365 thing, and we need to be building something out where, maybe you're not working out every single day, but you're thinking about your health and you're making, an effort to move towards a healthier lifestyle every single day. And, I think that's where one of the biggest things that I've seen in trucking is just that mindset. And, it's either I can't do anything about my health because I'm a driver, or I only focus on that one time a year when I go get my 1 year card because I just got to check all the boxes. So I make sure I, can stay behind the wheel.
Kind of on the diet thing, is it your experience, keeping in mind that we have an average age of 48 for the drivers, at that point in their 40s, is diet the most important, or is exercise the most important? And how do you, I've seen many posts from you all about diet, and on the road diet and how important that is. But if you're going to focus on activity or diet, which one would be the most important for a 40 something?
Well, you know what? That's like saying which one's your favorite kid, right? You probably can pick which one is an easier change for you. But at the end of the day, if you look at the research and you look at some of the statistics, you could probably make a case that exercise is really important. And when you look at it, the CDC put out a study that said I think 10% of early deaths are caused from a lack of not in an inadequate amount of exercise. So you look at that and you're like, oh, exercise is the most important part. And then you look at, on the nutrition side of things and you're like, well, a Snickers has 300 calories and I run for an hour and I only burn 100 calories. I better focus on my nutrition. And, probably the smartest way to look at it is somewhere in the middle. And if you're starting out, and I tell this to drivers, is you got to figure out, I look at it as where's the low hanging fruit and where's the easiest starting spot. For some drivers, it is, let's just start moving more and let's just go there and then let's get the tires turning and building up some of those small wins. And then we can start adding some nutrition things. Other drivers are like, no, I don't want to sweat. I don't want to have to shower every single day. I get so many answers. Some of them, yeah. But so we focus on the nutrition side of things. And, I think regardless of which path you decide, say, hey, I'm going to start there. I think the biggest thing, especially if you're in your late 40s, in your 50s, and maybe you haven't done anything or haven't thought about your health or making healthier decisions since, maybe high school football. The biggest thing is saying, hey, let's not try to flip this 180 and you have to change everything tomorrow. And I'm going to start this huge diet. I'm going to sign up for Planet Fitness and go to the gym every single day, because you're setting yourself up to fail, especially if you're a driver with the lifestyle that you live. And, there's just a lot of constraints and barriers that make it really difficult for them. And so especially when I'm doing onboarding calls with members, is let's start smaller than you want to start. And then if we can do it on a consistent basis, then let's ramp it up. And let's just get it. I tell drivers all the time, I care what you're doing in 3 weeks from today, but I care a lot more what you're doing 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from today. And that's where we're really going to make huge impacts, on your health. And so let's set this up in a way that's, that you can do it throughout, the rest of your career, the rest of your life.
Yeah. So what are some ways, as we talked about at the beginning, a driver is out on the road all the time, some of them at least. So what are some small ways, some small things that they can change to set them in on the right path?
Yeah. So, the first thing that I always try to get drivers to, focus on is shifting the mindset. And the mindset that majority of drivers come in with is this mindset of focusing on the things that they can't control. Right. And when you look at the things that you can't control, all of a sudden it looks like this impossible, huge, barrier that you're having to climb over, this huge mountain that you have to, walk up. But when you shift it to a mindset of, let me just focus on what I can control, all of a sudden there's a bunch of these small changes throughout your day-to-day life where you can just make, one tweak here. You can move for 5 or 10 minutes here. And I really tell them, let's focus on just developing some healthier habits. And let's start with one that we do on a consistent basis. And then as, that becomes part of your routine, your day-to-day life, let's just start stacking them. And so, for example, one of the things I was just talking to a driver the other night is, he drinks a ton of soda while driving down the road, and he was, it's something that a lot of drivers find themselves at. This driver, and I've had drivers in the past who are drinking, 12, 15 cans of soda a day while driving. And it's like just stacking up the calories, stacking up the grams of sugar. And, when you're diabetic or you're trying to lose weight, it's really hard to do that when you're drinking that many calories. So just, working on cutting down, switching from soda, from a regular soda to a diet soda, or a regular soda to another 0-calorie beverage, and just cutting down the amount of calories that you're consuming. So that's just one example of a nutritional habit change.
Yeah, kind of spinning off the need for the nutrition and the need for the activity in the diet. I want to ask Matt a question about sleep apnea and kind of what you're seeing there. We've had the FMCSA make pushes in the past to try to get a sleep apnea regulation put in place, and it failed for a number of reasons. The hang-up could have been, the actual parameters of that, what triggers the sleep apnea testing, or who bears the cost of that. In your opinion, what was the biggest reason for the failure of that sleep apnea regulation, and what can we do in the future with that?
Right. Well, so it's important to note first that there's guidance from the FMCSA on kind of what they think, or there's been studies that they say use as guidance, but there is nothing that the FMCSA says you have to do this or you have to do X, Y, and Z when a driver comes in and is on a sleep machine, is on a CPAP or BiPAP or whatever, or fit under these other criteria that would stimulate you to want to get a sleep study, for instance, neck size, or their BMI or something like that. So I can't tell you really why they don't give us standards. I would prefer them to just give us straight up standards. If their BMI is this and their neck is this, they have to have a sleep study done. I usually won't do them. I won't trigger a sleep study in these situations unless I see something else, like unless I am seeing or my feel is that maybe they are having an issue here and is going to be dangerous. Again, I always go back to, is it going to be dangerous for you to be on the road? Is it unsafe for you to be on the road? I'm not going to just say, well, your neck is too big, so I'm going to send you for a sleep study. But there are a lot of, and I've talked to other CMEs that will do it every single time. Every single time that a driver's neck is too big or their BMI is whatever, they will send them for a sleep study. So it's this inconsistency with the way that the exams are done. And I'm not saying that one is wrong and one is right. Certainly, somebody can 100%, meaning a medical examiner can 100% trigger an exam for any reason that they want if they feel that that's what they need to be comfortable giving this person a medical card. So I'm not saying that's wrong, but I would rather have that from the FMCSA. The FMCSA is taking regulations or taking the information away more from the certified medical examiner than they are giving it. I mean, they did away with their most recent medical examiner handbook. They have one that they're drafting right now that isn't, as they tell me, that isn't ready yet and I shouldn't be using, but we have no piece of documentation at this very moment that says these are the standards, these are the waiting periods, these are how long that you can certify somebody for. I would prefer that, to be honest. So I can't really give you an answer to why that doesn't happen. I think it should happen. I think the FMCSA should be more clear with specifically what they want on some of these big topics, like sleep apnea being one of the biggest ones that I see.
Yeah, it's, I ask that question just because I've been curious. I've always wanted to talk to a medical examiner about the sleep apnea issue specifically, but I recently looked at a fleet and did a risk assessment on a fleet that had a really inordinate number of drivers with very high BMIs. I'm talking one driver had a BMI of 68, and how that driver could be medically certified was pretty surprising to me. I mean, do you ever see drivers that have BMIs that are just astonishing, that don't have those chronic issues that would warrant a lesser medical card?
I don't know if I've ever seen a 68. just to be honest with you, I don't know if I've ever seen that. But yeah, a 68 would be it would be tough for you to get a medical card from me. I mean, there's a degree of what's reasonable and what's, I mean, that's you would, if somebody came in, they had a 68 BMI and didn't have high blood pressure, blood sugar control regulation issues, pre-diabetes, whatever it is, sleep apnea. I mean, they 100% would have sleep apnea. I wouldn't know. I
It's a miracle.
that's a
You would need to get a
unicorn.
blood
Yeah,
sample from that driver
Yeah,
so you could test that blood because he's a superhero.
that's exactly right. I mean, I've seen weird things. I've seen drivers that look like visually look at them and weigh them and whatever that look like, oh, this person's going to be super, super unhealthy and they're not on any medications. I read their blood pressure and it's like they were a 18-year-old girl. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. Basically, it's, just to close out the sleep apnea, I'll just give you what I do personally, which I think is pretty appropriate is if I think that somebody is at risk for having sleep apnea, again, not just based on what their size of their neck or their BMI is, but I'm seeing signs or they're checking their paperwork that they are sleepy a lot of the times or need a nap during the day or whatever. If I'm just getting that sense, I'll send them for a sleep study test, but I really won't beyond that. But what I will do is if somebody has sleep apnea and is using a machine currently, I will ask for a month of data that shows that they're being compliant with using their machine, because I do feel like that is very important for the safety. If you've been diagnosed and you are under medical treatment, you should be following that medical treatment, and I should be able to get that information to make it very, very clear that it is safe for you to drive. So that's kind of how I play the sleep apnea as far as getting somebody a medical card or not.
I did want to ask you kind of on that point. It seems like I've had this situation come up a few times for carriers who come to me. Obviously, carriers have an obligation to make sure that their drivers have valid and up-to-date medical cards, and they kind of have to track the expirations because you don't want a driver out on the road who has an expired medical card. That can lead to issues with their CDLs being downgraded, et cetera. Seems like I've seen issues where a driver receives a medical card for however long it's going to be valid for, but then the medical examiner will issue like a recommendation to them to go get a sleep study. And so the carriers come to me and say, well, what do we do with that? Is that something they have to do to remain qualified or not? And so I know that it always seems a little odd to me for that to happen because, at least in my understanding of the regulations, is you either get the medical card or you don't from the medical examiner. And then, like you said, Matt, you kind of leave it up to their treating physician to kind of deal with the management of the issues. How does that work? At least, how do you do it when you identify folks who you think do need a sleep study? Do you hold off on issuing the med card until the sleep study's done? I would assume that would how it would work normally.
Okay, so a couple different things here. One is number one is I hear some crazy stuff about exams being, because I'll see drivers a lot of times and they've had exams done by other people. And again, I'm not saying anybody else is doing anything wrong or, you leave it up to the provider's best judgment. But I hear all kinds of weird stuff about they gave me the card, but they said do this. And so again, I go back to my job is to to see if you're safe to drive. And, I want you to be healthy. I'm a humanitarian. I care about people, but my job is not to figure out if you need to be treated for something medically. It's to make sure that you can drive. So once I hand you that card and you walk out my door and my people put you into the computer, you're medically cleared to drive. You don't need to do anything else. You have that piece of paper, you're good to go.
Yeah, that always seemed weird to me when I would get those situations because it puts the carriers in a bad spot because the driver under the regulations is qualified because they've got a med card, but now you've got something out there that says this driver should be doing something else. And so now as a carrier looking at it, I'm worried about that driver getting involved in an accident. And now we knew that there was a doctor out there who said they need to go get a sleep study, even though they got a valid medical card. So that always struck me as a little odd.
I've never done that personally. I've heard of kind of weird situations like that. I don't think that's the standard that should be applied. As far as issuing cards and not, if I feel like somebody has a pretty good handle on, like for sleep apnea, I'm not going to not certify them day of. That's where those 3-month clearance certifications can come in, and then that gives them time to go out and get the data that they need. I do that a lot for a lot of different reasons, to be honest. If I thought somebody needed a sleep study, I would give them a 3-month card, unless, again, I thought there was another reason for them not to be on the road right then and there.
The 3 month cards are a little unique, right? They can only get one 3 month card, right? And then if they don't get,
Yeah, you don't keep repeating that.
you don't
Yeah.
keep repeating 3 months. So the next one you've got to get either a 1 year or a 2 year. Is that right? Or you're just not qualified at that point.
I've never given somebody multiple three.
Yeah.
It's 3 months and then you automatically get a 1 year.
Yeah.
I think for I don't know of another situation where you could get a 2 year after getting a 3 month because sleep apnea is automatic 1 year. So.
Yeah. So kind of on in the same vein, sleep apnea is obviously kind of a unique. It's not unique to the general population, but it seems to be overrepresented among truck drivers. I'll ask Mark: are there any other kind of those types of unique health issues that you're seeing more commonly among the drivers that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like you said, I don't know about unique. I think there's a lot of unhealthy people within the United States and our society in general. But when you look at some of the data on truck drivers, you've got 85% of them who are overweight. You've got one in every seven who are suffering from type 2 diabetes, which I think is like 2 times more percentage wise than the average population. And the one that was actually a kicker to me, and one of the things that I read prior to starting supply chain fitness was, as a whole, truck drivers have a life expectancy 16 years less than the average population.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy.
you look at that, and right now, the average age of death in the United States is 78 years old. So you cut down 16 years and you've got, I can't tell you how many fleets have an average age close to that, low to mid 60s, right? And it's like, what are we doing to cut down and just, looking at your fleet from, looking at the individual humans on your fleet, not only from risk of your truck, not only, risk of your bottom line, but looking at the humans and the employees that work for you and sit behind the truck. What are we doing to, help them, enjoy their career as a driver, but also thinking about life after trucking? And, I can't tell you how many drivers that I'm just scared and hoping that, they realize, hey, I need to make a change, because they are stacking up with obesity, diabetes, and they're coming towards that retirement. And now they don't get to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They're enjoying going to doctor's visits and dealing with, all of these chronic diseases that could have been prevented if they would have just, put a little bit of effort or had the resources given to them and the accountability given to them throughout their career as a driver.
Yeah, Mark, I was curious with supply chain fitness. Are you building, exercise programs for drivers? Do you get that in depth with building exercise programs? Because I've seen a lot of your posts where, you'll have bands out, you're doing exercises where a driver could be doing these at a rest stop, etc. Are you building exercise plans?
Correct. So every driver, so when we work with a fleet, they're drivers who become members of ours. They get a personalized exercise and nutrition program right through our app on their phone. And so we give them a personalized on the exercise side of things based off of, their current fitness level, because there's a spectrum there of drivers, what their goals are, and then also, where they want to work out at. So we've got programs and content that is, in the truck, outside of the truck, and at home. And so I'll say, I like to tell this story when I'm talking about, our programs. Of the In the Truck program actually got started when we first started the trucking fitness company that's now Supply Chain Fitness. We had one of our beta testers. We only had out of the truck programs, and she came to me during, I was talking to them every week, saying how the program, just getting advice, from the driver so we can make the program better. And something that she said was, number one, I'm a little self-conscious to get outside of the truck stop and work out in front of all these people. And then also, when she was driving, there were truck stops where she didn't feel safe to get out and for extended periods of time. And so we developed off of that, and then talking to some of the other drivers, we developed a whole program that they can do in their truck. And that's the most popular program out of all of ours. Is, drivers like they're, they don't want to be doing it and be the odd person out at the truck stop, even though that stereotype needs to be broken down. I understand, especially when you're just getting started. You just want to kind of do it in your own space and, go through the process.
That's funny that just real quick. That's funny that you bring that up. I'm actually traveling right now, and I'm on a road trip. I'm actually in North Carolina, and we stopped at a rest stop, and I saw a guy out of his truck. He's parked off kind of to the side, but he had some kind of log or something, and he's doing lunges up and down
Let's
the
go.
side
Yeah,
side
that's
of the highway,
awesome.
and then
That's
back. I was
awesome.
like, oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, it did look unusual, but I mean, the guy was jacked anyway. You could tell that he
Yeah.
was taking it seriously. But I was like, man, it takes a lot of stones to go out there and do this in front of all these, these kids walking back and forth and this truck stop and all this. So it's pretty cool. Rest stop.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the things that I've tried to do, and we're trying to build every single day, is giving drivers the easiest entry point. And that mental aspect of having people staring at you, feeling self-conscious, that's a big hurdle to get over when you're just getting started, or honestly, just if you're not confident about your fitness, or you're just not a super outgoing person. And there's a lot of people who inherently, are very private people as drivers. And so we want to build something where, cutting down as many barriers or areas that drivers can just say, nah, this isn't for me. Well, you don't have to do it in front of all these other people at the truck stop. You can do it, in the privacy of your bunk or at home if you're a local driver.
Yeah, I was interested also. I was going to ask you, Mark, to tell us one of your success stories. I'm sure you've got some different ones, but tell me your best success story.
Yeah, so my best success story, I actually already kind of mentioned it earlier on about the drinking soda. But like I said, when we onboard a driver, they get a one-on-one call with one of our coaches. And during this one-on-one call, luckily I was the one that taken the call, and when we were talking and just talking about the day-to-day life and kind of where he thinks the biggest barrier was from health and fitness, where he thinks he needs the most work. And he was just to kind of paint the picture. I think he's drive OTR for 8 years now, and he is diabetic. He's pretty overweight. I think he gained 40 pounds since starting trucking, and just feeling blah throughout the day, just really not energized, and talking about the fatigue that you brought up earlier. But something that he said is every single day while driving, he drinks 2 12-packs of Pepsi. 24 sodas a day. And that kind of took my breath away when he first said it. I've never heard that much soda been drink by a single person in a day. And so what we did is just, it wasn't a, overnight thing. We just, over a couple of weeks and months, slowly cut down, and he doesn't drink any soda anymore. I think he might drink a regular soda. He might drink a couple of diet sodas, diet Pepsis throughout the day, but just cutting down on the amount of sugar and calories he was consuming from all of those drinks. And, funny story, all he did was that. We didn't do this huge workout plan. But from that one change.
Uh-oh. Frozen, Mark.
Froze, yeah.
All right, Matt, you're gonna have to pick up and
well, let's take wagers on how much of that 40 pounds came off from just making the soda change. Yeah. I'm gonna say 15 pounds.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 10.
If that's he's back. All right, I don't have to guess.
Oh, Matt, come on.
You got to give your guess.
All right, so I'm just gonna go over.
Okay.
I'm gonna take the over.
Matt, how many pounds did he lose? Or Mark, I'm sorry. Uh-oh, no, he's lost him.
It's gone again.
All right, well,
he'll come back.
I mean, if that was I'd be more interested, or I'd be interested as well as to know what was he doing before trucking? Did trucking really get him into that type of habit, or was he always kind of like that and then trucking just accelerated, or kind of how did that work?
Yeah, Mark, you got us now.
Oh my gosh! I get in the zone, and then my Wi-Fi doesn't want to keep up. But
you left us at the crucial moment.
Yeah, I know. Cliffhanger.
So, we cut down on the soda, and started just drinking more 0-calorie beverages, diet soda, some other 0-calorie. I think he likes Gatorade Zero and some other low-calorie drinks. And it was just crazy how from that one change he lost a ton of weight. He was feeling more energized. I think in the first couple of months, it was like 20 pounds. I don't know the total right now. But
we took wagers on that, by the way.
Mark, you took wagers. Okay. Yeah. All right. But it's just kind of, that's a great example. And I think there's a lot of drivers out there who's probably not drinking 24 Pepsis a day, but are, there's some habits where if you just make a small change, it's crazy the impact that one change can have. And so, and I came in, Matt, when I think you were talking about, was he doing that prior to trucking,
Right.
or, and I don't know. I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know that answer. I'm sure he drank soda prior. I'm sure, I don't know if it was 24. But I think the biggest thing that I try to get drivers to think is, trucking and just our society in general, I think, have this mindset when it comes to making changes to their health, that it's this all or nothing, and I better just strap on and hold on for as long as possible. And I only lasted a week, and you've got all these fad diets and all these other things. And the impact that just small changes that are done over a consistent period of time can have. And it's not this 180 lifestyle change. It's just this, let me just put a 2 minutes in, or a little effort in on my day-to-day life, and then it just becomes routine, and you just slowly make those changes.
Yeah, I want to pivot a little bit now to talk a little bit about kind of a related but different topic, drug and alcohol testing, and how that impacts the industry. This is another huge area of compliance that we're constantly working with fleets on. As most listening will know, CDL drivers of the larger trucks, or the trucks that are hauling placardable quantities of hazmat, are subject to mandatory drug and alcohol testing. And so we see all kinds of issues arise out of that platform. Matt, I was going to ask you, are you a medical review officer as well, or do you?
No.
Okay.
We are a specimen collection site, but no, I'm not an MRO.
So the question I had, and it comes up fairly frequently, and I think it causes a lot of confusion to folks, especially carriers that have mixed fleets. They have some CDL drivers and they have some non-CDL drivers. Those non-CDL drivers are not subject to drug and alcohol testing, but the thing that always comes up is about marijuana use and CBD use among those drivers, and whether it's legal in their states. How does that impact things or not? And I think, Matt, you have a video on this. Do you want to just break the news to everybody that's watching?
I think I have 5 videos on this. It's such a those are always my really popular videos. Are the drug testing ones, especially the marijuana, because the FMCSA isn't the states. That's the federal government. The federal government says marijuana is illegal. So marijuana is illegal if you have a CDL. And the FMCSA or any government agency, they're not doing hair testing, they're doing urine testing specifically. So again, there's a shorter window of testing positive, but if you test positive in that window, and the average is about 30 days, then it's a positive test. It's just like if you tested positive for cocaine or heroin, or, I mean, they don't care, meaning the FMCSA, it's an illegal substance. As far as CBD oil, I recommend not using that as well, because it's not regulated all that well. If it's got THC in it, and THC metabolites is what's showing up in the drug test, then you're going to pop positive for that as well, unless you know that there is almost no THC in the product that you're using.
Well, and as you said, that's hard to know because there's so little regulation on the manufacturers of that product. They may claim that it has 0 THC in it, but nobody's holding them accountable to those representations. And so we've seen this play out. There's probably dozens at this point of class action lawsuits out there by drivers who had taken, whether it be a gummy or some other kind of edible of CBD that had claimed on the package to contain no THC, and then they go test positive for a drug test. And as you said, Matt, now once you test positive under the federal rules, you're out of a job. You can't operate until you go through that return to duty process. So we make the same recommendations to our clients. You got to have a policy: no CBD, no marijuana for sure. And the other kind of related issue to that is that CDL versus non-CDL distinction. So a lot of my clients will come and say, well, for our non-CDL drivers, we don't have to worry so much about this, right? Their use of marijuana in states where it's legal. And I tell them it's not necessarily true, because putting aside whether they're subject to drug and alcohol testings, it's always been my understanding under the regulations that drivers are physically unqualified if they're using a Schedule I drug, which it is at the federal level. So even if you're a non-CDL driver, not subject to drug and alcohol testing, you are not physically qualified if you're using marijuana, even though it may be legal in your state.
That's correct. I guess the issue comes down to, do you check the I use marijuana box on your intake paperwork, or do you not?
How else do you know? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was one of the comments that I was going to make is the level, if a driver, whether CDL or not, gets involved in a crash and they're drug tested, they pop positive, this level of scrutiny that's going to be placed on that med card and that examination is going to be extremely high. Why didn't you say you use CBD during the examination? Why didn't you say that you use marijuana? So it's just absolutely not worth it from a CBD standpoint, and obviously from a marijuana standpoint as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
Go
I keep hearing that all this is, the government moves like a glacier, right? So I keep hearing that maybe we're moving towards saliva testing, or maybe we're moving towards deregulation, but I mean, nothing. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up to that happening right now. And again, I made a video again also about the driver shortage and these studies showing that people that use marijuana can't drive. People choose to use marijuana instead of driving. Now we've got I don't know, you guys probably know the numbers better than I do, but this huge driver shortage, and it's causing a lot of the problems that we're having now with inflation and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, marijuana, I think, is going to have to be resolved one way or the other eventually.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things I wanted to show this. The Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse has now been in effect for a couple of years. This is the centralized database that the FMCSA maintains of all positive drug positive and refusals, essentially drug and alcohol violations among CDL drivers. And they publish a report every month that shows how many positive tests there were and kind of where things stand, whether drivers who have tested positive have gone through the return to duty process or not. And these are just crazy numbers. So this is from the beginning of the drug and implementation of the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. You could see from this chart, this is May 2022's monthly report. You could see that all drivers with at least one drug or alcohol violation over that time period, 129,829 drivers with a drug or alcohol violation. That means those drivers, when that happens, are prohibited from continuing to operate a commercial motor vehicle. And then you could see of those 129,000, how many are still in prohibited status all this time later. 96,000 drivers are currently in prohibited status, and only 33,000 have actually gone through that whole return to duty process and now are back to being able to operate a commercial motor vehicle. So when we hear, the stats about how many drivers we are short in the industry, I think the number that I've heard most recently is 80,000. I think the ATA said about 80,000 short. Well, there's your 80,000
Right.
drivers. It's includes certainly drivers, a huge population of drivers who've tested positive for drugs or alcohol and haven't completed that return to duty process. And the other thing that goes kind of hand in hand with that is what drugs they're testing positive for. Far and away, marijuana is
Right.
the number one culprit.
And I'd be really interested to see how many of those, we could never get this data, but how many of those were the result of CBD usage,
Yeah,
which,
right.
it's unfortunate for drivers. They hear all these great things about, pain management and swelling and inflammation management with CBD, and they just can't use it, or they choose to roll the dice and use it, and maybe they end up on this list. But the figure that's shocking to me is the almost 73,000 drivers that haven't even started the return to duty process. I mean, you would think that those drivers have just elected to go a different career route.
Yeah. That's what I hear from a lot of drivers.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're about out of time. We want to give the last word to you all to kind of tell us where folks can find more information about you, check out your videos, learn more what you're up to. So, Mark, you want to start us out?
Yeah, so if you look up Supply Chain Fitness on any social media or and Google it and supplychainfitness.com, you can go check us out. And if you're trying to take a proactive approach at creating a healthier fleet and healthier workforce in general, we'd love to work with you. And if you want to check me out on LinkedIn, Dr. Mark Manera, and I post a bunch of content on there. Thank you guys both for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks
Matt?
a lot.
Yeah, so Easy DOT Physicals, if any drivers are in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Indiana kind of area, look me up there. I'd be happy to help you stay medically certified, medically cleared to drive. check out my YouTube channel. I mean, this is a free thing that every driver can do to be up on the standards. I mean, you don't have to watch every one of my videos, but if a new standard comes out from the FMCSA, I'm going to know about it first. I'm going to make a video because I'm sick of seeing drivers come into my office not knowing these standards, and then I'm not able to certify them. I want to help drivers keep their jobs. So go to YouTube, Easy DOT Physicals, and just hit the subscribe button and the bell so that you know when I make a new video.
Yeah, take these guys up on their offer. They're a great resource on their respective topics, experts on these topics. So check out their materials and hit them up if you have any questions. And yeah, definitely a wealth of information there. So thanks so much, guys, for being with us. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you again. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, these guys are absolutely on the cutting edge of protecting, drivers being out on the road, and obviously the drivers are the biggest resource for the motor carriers, and they're the lifeblood of the industry. So it's great work that they're doing.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap up the show. A few last things before we sign off here. Be sure to check out our courses over at Trucksafe Academy. We hit on all of the latest DOT compliance topics, things like driver qualification, hours of service, vehicle maintenance, drug and alcohol testing, all of these topics that you as a regulated carrier are expected to know. We try and hit on those, make them more intuitive for you to understand. These are online courses. We have courses for safety managers and drivers. We've got a reasonable suspicion course. We've got a new hazmat course for folks who have to get the mandatory 3-year training on hazmat. So check those out if you're interested. Again, trucksafeacademy.com. Also, don't forget about the webinar tomorrow for network members, Trucksafe Compliance Network members. We're doing a webinar tomorrow, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, on personal conveyance use. Check that out. Tune in. And then lastly, just be sure to follow us on our social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're constantly posting articles on all of these types of topics. So be sure to check those out. Anything else, Jerad?
No, I'm deeply saddened that we didn't have time for the push-up competition with Dr. Manera.
We forgot all about that.
Yeah.
You challenged him to a
Maybe
contest.
next time.
Yeah, okay. We'll try it next time. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time. We hope to see you there.
Thank you.